And welcome to Chapel FM Arts Centre on East Leeds FM, where we are broadcasting for 4 days spoken word writing on air, our annual festival. It's been a fantastic thing so far, I think. Thank you so much to Yaffle just now, and then before that to Transforming with Poetry, Inkwell. Now, I'm really excited about this next programme. We're going out to the world, by the way. We have listeners in Peru, we know that. We had, and also in Belgium, strangely. We had a lot listening from Belgium in last Writing on Air. And we've had a fantastic array of performers, but this is going to be special. So Studio 12 is a great place where wonderful things happen. And we're really, really proud to have Khadijah Ibrahiim again. She was here very recently with us, back again today, and she's going to be introducing these wonderful performers. So give them a big welcome, please.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that. Thank you. So welcome to Manifesto in Verse. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background of what that is. Manifesto in Verse is a project that celebrated 100 years since women got the right to vote. The project participants, who you're going to hear from later on, all participated in the workshop with Studio 12 and myself, and they used poetry to express their views linked to the suffrage movement and to write their own manifestos based on 100 years into the future. Studio 12 is a digital media initiative that delivers poetry workshops, media workshops, and they're based in the Central Library in the city centre. It's also an information service where they provide free access to digital resources, including multimedia, video, photography, music, software for young people aged 16 to 30. So let's just give Studio 12 a round of applause. Let's give the women that are sitting here that are part of Manifesto in Verse a round of applause. Yeah. So you are going to be in for an amazing treat. They've been writing poems, as I've mentioned, around 100 years since women got the vote. And so this is their own manifesto, looking at what it means to them today to be a woman in today's society. So first up, I'm going to introduce Jasdeep. So Jasdeep is a poet. She's a yoga instructor. She also, just finding your thing here, sorry. She's a yoga instructor. She's part of the Voice Box Cafe. She was also part of Borderlines. We want to introduce her to the stage. Please welcome Jasdeep.
Thank you. This piece is called Because I Am a Woman. Because I am a woman, it means that my arse is ripe to be plucked by faceless passers-by. Because I am a woman, I must be seeking male attention, be flirting with them, or I at least have to let them try. Because I am a woman, if someone calls me beautiful, it's weird to question why. Because I am a woman, I am asked every single day if I'm in a relationship, and each time I let out a big sigh. Am I mad for telling the truth? That I'm finding and learning from myself? Well, I must be, because I'm not trying to be a trophy on somebody else's shelf. I'm focusing on my health, wealth, and inner wealth. I'm focusing on what the world needs, planting seeds, and I hope that others take heed. Because I am a woman, I must look perfect on Instagram. Because I am a woman, I must watch my weight to keep a man. I don't really give a damn. Because I am a woman, I must have an arse or tits. If you don't have either, then at least you have your lips and they can be of service. I would much rather that you measured me by my grades or how I stop myself from going insane, my eagerness to learn, the favours that I return, the way that I have self-respect and that I self-reflect. Rather than asking me if I take speed, how about we talk about the books that we read? Thank you.
So that's Jasdeep. And I want to just ask Jasdeep a few questions, if that's okay.
That's okay.
Okay, so I was listening to your poem and you talk about young women's issues. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you today?
Young women's issues, I think, are just anything that young women are feeling today. And that mostly comes from what they see outside in society a lot of the time on social media. And I think it can be really harmful and damaging for young girls to see what an ideal woman is, because I don't think there's any such thing. I just think people should be allowed to be who they are, and they shouldn't have to feel like they have to fit into a box or that they have to be a Kardashian, because that's not real.
So just tell me one more thing. In terms of writing your poem, what inspired you to come up with that idea, that concept?
A lot of things that have been bothering me recently. Yeah, I'd say that they were just on my mind, and they've affected me recently. Things that I've experienced and seen.
Okay. One more round of applause for Jasdeep, please. Come on. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next poet up is Lulia. So Lulia is a writer. She's interested in theatre, the theatre of words, and she likes to explore the landscape of words through poetry. I want you to welcome Lulia to the stage.
You see, before I never knew if I was a feminist, but now I know, I've made up my mind, that feminism is the end of division between men and women. And that's all there is to it, equality of the sexes, no matter who you are or where you're from. Because yes, Sojourner Truth, your words still ring true. Ain't I a woman too? So I'd rather call myself a humanist. Take away the subdivisions and give to each human what they're owed. Dignity, respect, equality, equal pay, bestowed to all. But Jane Austen, your novels still play out in the lives of women in some corners of the first world, where wherever they go, they must live in the pocket of man, taken out and put back in again, only by their hand. They are nothing but their property, an object, a gift, or something to be hidden away, should we misbehave. But it's like what you said, Manal al-Sharif. Countries that keep women in the back seat will always end up on the wrong side of history. Like Rosa Parks, who got on the bus in 1950s America and decided to say no to injustice, and ultimately won. A reminder we should never run from our convictions, rather give voice to our decisions. Start fighting for what we believe in. Yet in the 21st century, we still fight for our liberty in a world of bombs and terrorists. And in some places, our wounds only give us the right to education poverty. It is as you say, Malala Yousafzai, the extremists are afraid of women. They are afraid of books and pens. The power of education frightens them. Make up your mind, for when one's mind is made up, that diminishes fear. Rosa Parks, your words are letters of encouragement, a statement of confirmation that activism starts on the inside, with you, the individual. Because others will always be the last to recognize your worth. That is the way of the world. I am the change I want to be, looking through history. I am the change I want to see, speaking up publicly. I am an amalgamation of the trailblazers before me, in the hope that when one rises, the rest will follow.
Thank you, Lulia. So I just want to ask you about the poem. What inspired you to write that poem?
I think I've always had a deep realization that I wouldn't be where I am today and have the privileges I have today if it weren't for strong women who laid the path before me around the world.
Nice. I like that, don't you? Yeah, come on. Okay, so I was reading something about you. You said that you like theatre, you like poetry. I mean, can you just tell me a little bit more about how you work with theatre and poetry?
So I have a couple of projects. For example, I collaborate with a theatre company called Mimesis, and I co-write the plays that we do, and I often will inject an element of spoken word into the plays, and some of the family-friendly plays as well. It's quite good to have an element of poetry in there to help engage with the children and make it a bit more fun.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much, Lulia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have Amanda. So Amanda is also a poet, and she's originally from Zimbabwe, and she grew up in Leeds. She goes by the name of A the Poet. Is that right? A the Poet. She was also part of Borderlines project, and in her spare time she enjoys running a charity called One Woman Together. Can we welcome Amanda to the stage, please?
She cries out in agony. Blood-red tears stream steadily away from her lids. The fertile green that used to flourish within her womb diminishes by the second. What have they done to her beloved land? The trees no longer stand tall in unison. Murder and rape are pierced into the hearts of her children. Unable to console, the rivers are flooded with tears. She cannot recognize herself in the mirror. She is not who she wanted to be. Many have prayed over her. She is unable to be released by the bonds that are tied to her by the elderly. Past traditions and anarchy rule over. The darkness in her heart spreads. The black is overcoming her, surrounding her. The yellow blossoming sun shall make its appearance again. She knows not yet of a date nor a time. She knows that freedom is a destination that is buried within her roots. Her neighbors turn away from her. The borders, the reason why? The invisible walls do not shield the wounds. By the minute, the border grows taller and taller. Unable to see her pain, the voices of her silenced children shall be heard again. The tears of our motherland shall be acknowledged. The pain of injustice shall not be ignored. She is my motherland. She will cry no more. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So I'm going to ask you the same question. What inspired you to write that piece?
So I wrote this piece just around the time where there was a bit of conflict in Zimbabwe, where I'm from, and it was just getting to a stage where voices are not being heard, and it's the turnaround of where we used to be and where we are now is so drastic, and there's so many people there that just want to be heard and want the country to flourish, but unfortunately, with the leadership that's currently there, that's just not happening. So it came to a point where I felt like I couldn't do anything. So when that's the case for me, I normally just put it into my writing, which inspired my words.
And what about the manifesto in verse in terms of 100 Women's Vote? How did you see how that poem worked as a reflection?
I guess in a sense of, I always see the country as being my motherland, so that being my mother, being the woman. So I feel like when you think of a mother, you think of nurture. So it's always been there the land has always been there to nurture us. So to me, that's how I saw it. That's how I interpreted it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
One more round of applause. Okay. Next up, we have Inas. Inas is a writer, poet, and visual artist. She started writing at the age of 13 when she joined Leeds Young Authors in 2004 as a means to express herself. Her poetry and short stories delve into the theme of womanhood, religion, and identity. Inas has recently become a Sunday practice poet in residence. Let's welcome her to the stage, please.
I am queen. I am Nuba queen.
I am Merowe Kush, African queen. I am Kende Kete, Amin Shakatu. In this land where women feast and fast, she feeds my people, builds kingdoms, gold under her feet, children under her breast, soldiers under her rule. She builds temples for the gods, kingdom of Kush. In the land of the Sud, the land of Sudan, the land of black, the kingdom of blacks. I am blind in my right eye, yet I fight with gold wrists. I fight with my head, not my fists. For peace and not for war, I am black. I am Nuba. I am black Pharaoh. I am a goddess. Like her, with kohl eyeliner, I am the Nile River. I am the source of life. Horus is energy. I rule a land that cultivates crops in the south, grazes skin by roaring sandstorms in the north. I am still woman. I am she. She is you. Woman we are. Aswad, Sud, Suda. A Sudan, the land of the blacks. As dark as a night sky, blue hues, purple undertones, black Aswad. I am black Pharaoh. I am warrior. I am Kingdom Kush. In the Bronze Age, I, Adini Amali. Thank you.
I think you enjoyed that, didn't you? Them claps went on for a long time. Well, thank you, Inas. I just want to ask you about the inspiration for your poem.
Okay, so I'm from Sudan, if you haven't noticed by the poem. I wanted to write a piece that was basically inspired by the black pharaohs, leaders that were the leaders of Sudan, basically in those ages. And I researched and I knew a little bit about it anyways, but I found out that it was Amin Shakatu, which is basically she is a woman and she ruled over the Nuba back in the days. And I just found it so interesting that she was basically a woman ruling back in those days. And she basically fought off the Greeks and all these things. And yeah, she's just amazing to say that, you know, she's black and she's a woman. And I kind of related to her in a way. Yeah.
That's quite interesting because you're talking about the past. And how do you see that past narrative, that history, how do you see that working for the future for yourself as an individual and also for other women?
So I know most recently, I know that Ethiopia got a female president, and you know there's been female presidents in the world throughout the times anyways, but I think it's very, very inspiring for me as a woman to know that there is another woman that looks like me that rules in Africa, especially with Amanda talking about how Zimbabwe has gone through all this stuff and Sudan's going through it at the moment. And it's mainly not to say that I'm anti-men or anything, but I feel like male ego is very overpowering sometimes. I think sometimes a female perspective can kind of even out the playing fields a little bit. So for me, the inspiration is just, for now, is that women in general can do whatever they feel like they can do to improve whatever situation that they're in. It's all about in the mind, so yeah.
For sure. One more round of applause for Inas. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so I do have a few more questions that I want to ask them in regards to their roles as poets and also where they see themselves in the future. So that is really the question. But also, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask them any questions that you'd like. So if you'd like to ask a question, just let us know. We're going to have a roving mic, and you just put your hand up and we'll come to you. So really, what I'd like to ask now is, where do you see yourself in the future in being part of Manifesto in Verse and the Voice Box Cafe, but also looking at that 100 years of women's vote in Britain? And then you've all got these, you're all part of a different group of people coming from different parts of the world, and you're here in Britain. That's what brings you here today. Where do you see yourselves? Do you see yourselves as part of that narrative?
In the future, I definitely see myself being a leader, and that's kind of been put in play with the charity that I have called One Woman Together. So my whole basis is of helping women provide them with sanitary products if they do not have access to it, because it's seen as kind of a luxury in society, in the West, in Africa, all over the world. It's seen as a luxury where it's not. So I feel like I'm using my position as a woman in privilege and helping provide for those women. That's where I see myself in the future, using my platform, whether it be poetry or my charity, to help other women. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Because I'm a theatre maker and I also love spoken word, what I'm sort of blending my work towards now is a more like a blend between theatre and spoken word. So I think that's where I see myself in the future, is not only just making, spoken word and theatre blends, fusions, but also making theatre shows, just straight theatre shows. And that's where I'm headed. I'm already that, to be fair. I already make theatre, but I hope to be able to showcase what I believe, can help change people's perceptions and better society, I guess, on a bigger platform. That's where I would hope to go.
Nice.
As a poet and as a person, I like to talk about things which I feel as people and as a society that we need to talk about more, and issues that we still need to work on. In future, I can see myself continuing to be a poet, because I'm thinking and writing all the time, to inspire people to take action in their lives for the better, for the betterment of everyone, and also to... Sorry, I was just thinking of it then. But also to... no, sorry, it's gone. Sorry.
It's okay. It can be quite overwhelming, but we understand what she's saying, don't we? Yeah, of course, of course. So just one more question for any one of you. How do you see poetry working for you in the future?
So, my whole incentive is based around mental health and, women issues, as you know. So poetry is kind of an outlet that I can allow myself to just be free and be me and say whatever I want without any judgment. So I think poetry would work for me in a sense of trying to combine that with the mental health, because I'm studying counselling at the moment, to try and combine them both, to try and hopefully take it on board and help other young kids. Especially coming from Leeds Young Authors, I felt like that was the only space that I had at that time. And I think it's very interesting to try and find spaces like these and others to try and get them to include kids, so they can actually have that incentive and be able to write and just create and just be themselves without having any kind of judgment. So yeah, that's mainly my point of view of it.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, so I'd like to open the floor to the audience to ask any questions. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question to any of these beautiful young women sitting here? Go on, ask them a question. Oh, look, we've got somebody there.
Really enjoyed this. we don't get enough young people in the poetry community. There's a lot of old people like me, too many people like me, so it's great to see such a great variation. I was going to ask you if you have aspirations. Do they include work on the page, or are you more? Would you like to be on a CD or a CD? You know how old I am now. You know what I'm saying. Yeah. Tape. Yeah. You don't know what tape is. Yeah. So, are you considered being on the page, or does not that matter? You want to be heard live, or how do you?
I'm currently trying to get my poetry to be better on the page because I'm more of a spoken poet. But I do have a YouTube channel. Check that out, A the Poet. Yeah, I think in the future I'm steadily going towards trying to write more on the page and maybe looking into writing more poetry in a book form. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing for my future.
For me, it's really interesting you asked that because I was thinking about that the other day after Khadijah had given me some feedback on one of my pieces that I wrote. That because it's a piece I wrote to be performed, it made me think, actually, would this translate well on the page? And so I thought, okay, I have to make a decision what I want my work to be. And for me, the decision was I wanted to write the poetry for theatre, like I mentioned before, the fusion. So for me, I'm going to write poetry that's meant to be performed. So, I mean, if it ends up on a page, fair enough, but I want it primarily to be something that is meant to be performed live in front of people. That's me.
I just quite like poetry to be accessible to everyone. So whether that's in a book or whether that's on YouTube or however it is, to echo what Inas was saying, it is about inspiring people to feel free to express themselves. So however, really. Yeah.
So I find I'm actually a spoken word artist and I call myself that. But I think with these workshops with Khadijah and Studio12, Khadijah's helped a lot in trying to edit my work and help me edit my work so it can actually resonate as powerful enough. I'm not a poet. as basically the resonate what exactly I mean on a page as much as it would in face-to-face and live. So yeah, thank you, Khadijah.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you. That was a really good question. Is there any more questions? Yeah?
I wanted to ask you about your writing process or your inspiration. What happens? How does it work, from, what inspires you, and then how does it end up on this page or in your mouth to be performed? Just, process, kind
of. Back up again. How I write my poetry is normally I would think of a sentence and it normally comes to me like before I sleep or when I wake up, mostly before I sleep. And I think it's the inspiration from it. I don't know, it's just a feeling, I guess. And that's how I see it. And it's how I portray that feeling in that sentence on that page, I guess. And then it just goes from there. Editing, I find editing very tedious, but at the same time, I think it's very, it's amazing. It feels really, really beautiful when you've edited something and then you can read it back to yourself and then you're just like, oh my God, I just wrote that. And it sounds exactly how you feel like it would sound in your head. But I just don't like editing, but I love the outcome of editing.
I think my process is probably not that different from else's. My writing process for poetry, it normally starts with a thought. I might just think something and a thought might capture my interest and I might write that thought down, and then it becomes a process of excavating what that thought is or means and just really going through the details of what that thought means. Like, what does it actually mean? What does that say about my experiences, what I've seen in the world, in society? And I just sort of allowed that process of exploration to go as I write. And if I need to research some things on the internet to sort of inform myself, then I will do that as well. And I'll just try not to force it. And then afterwards, I will edit it.
For me these days, it just kind of flows. I don't know how, like, just to give like kind of context and background. We were entering this competition in school, in primary school, and it was poems about the environment. And I wrote a poem and it ended up getting published. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I didn't think about even writing because as a child, obviously, you want to do other things. But then my granddad passed away and all I could feel was pain. And for some reason, something told me that I had to put pen to paper. And I felt an incredible amount of release and relief from doing so and healing. And then, I don't know, I think just significant life events, I've just felt quite overwhelmed and it just felt natural to write. And then I've just managed to get into a state of flow where, I don't know, if I just think about something, it will just come out. So, yeah, it's quite magical, really. Yeah.
I think we might have time for one more question.
Can I ask one? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
First, no, I'll work here.
Yeah, go on,
I just wanted
Siobhan.
to say it's just amazing to see such powerful young women speaking. And I know when Khadijah and I did a project many years ago called Voices of Women, there were not very many women out speaking. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that your generation of women are more able to find your voices and to speak? And there seem to be so many young women with powerful voices and new stories to tell in the world that I think we need. I just wanted what you felt about that.
Me again. So I think because we're in an age right now where it's not necessarily, it's more women in the forefront, I feel like, just because of all these movements like feminism, womanism, and, slut walk, like, we're doing all this stuff, women empowerment, and dress how you feel, all that kind of thing. I feel like women have taken a stand. I feel like women have always been there. They've always been behind, like even with the Manifesto, to basically speak their truth and make sure that their voices have been heard. And it's only fair, it's only right, let's say, that we as women now in this generation, we actually take on those voices and make them our own and add on to it. Because if we don't have a voice, then what are we,
I definitely agree. And I think now we're at a stage where our voices are now heard. Like, we have more channels to express our voice. So there's YouTube channels, there's podcasts, there's no, before there wasn't that space for you to express what you felt or express how you feel and express what you were thinking or your thoughts on certain situations, and you were very much shut down for saying that. And now there's no room for it, and we're very much in an open society, or society is beginning to open up a lot more. And I think the YouTube movement and the podcast movement, it's very much opening the doors to more women voices, definitely.
Yes?
There was another question. I'll answer really quickly. I agree with what these two have just said, and I would add as well that being in a country like England, where there is less repercussions for women speaking up, I think now it is becoming easier for women to speak up and say what they want to say honestly, without fear of imprisonment or anything like that, which is some of the themes that came out in the piece that I did, that even in the 21st century, in other countries in the world, women are being persecuted for speaking up or wanting education and things like that. So, but yes, in this country, I think definitely women are being bolded to speak up.
Just to expand upon what Lulia said as well, I think we all want to encourage everyone to speak up and to express how they feel, but particularly for myself and these guys, being a woman and a woman from an ethnic background, sometimes we are told to we're kind of oppressed sometimes. And for me, it's been really powerful in writing poetry, and I feel a lot more confident for doing so, and accepted. And yeah, I think it's really important because a lot of the time people don't feel like they can do that, or they feel like there will be repercussions. So this has been really, really powerful. Yeah.
So, well, I think we probably need to wrap up, but I thank you for giving us that at the end there, because the theme of the festival is the voice, speaking out and being heard and listening as well. So that last comment there, thank you so much for that, because it's right on the button for us. And I think one thing I wanted to just come back, it was more of a statement really, just an observation. You talked about the poem that you wrote at school, at primary school, and it's I think a source of grief to quite a few of us that poetry doesn't seem to figure. Creative writing seems to be fading as something that's encouraged particularly in primary schools. We're very much in the business here at Chapel FM of working with schools and getting young people to write poetry and to perform it, to read it here. And I think it's so important. So, and I think that you said that later on, poetry, that was what occurred to you to do. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling it was because you wrote that poem when you were very young. Yeah. And there was a kind of an imprint of confidence that you could do that made you now do what you're doing.
Definitely. Yeah.
So,
no, I definitely think so, because to me it was just a poem, it was just some rhymes, but receiving acknowledgement for that, and talking about quite a big issue such as climate change and the environment, it was quite empowering. But like I said, I didn't really think about it, and then I just felt compelled to write. So I don't know where that came from, but it was definitely a factor. And I think that as children, like you were saying, it's really important that they are encouraged to express themselves and to engage in as many activities as possible and to receive encouragement for that, because it will help them later on in life and it will help the rest of society. Yeah.
Just to say thank you so much to these 4 young people here, 4 young writers, Khadijah Ibrahiim and the wonderful Studio 12. Give them a round of applause, please. Wonderful. Yeah.